Welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. Thank you for joining us with this review video. I'm Jerch, to my right is John, to my left is Corey. If you like any of this stuff that you're watching here, click the like button, subscribe. We've got plenty of videos on a bunch of different board games, but the one we're talking about today is Messina 1347. Corey, how did you hear about this game, and what is the play style?
The first thing that attracted me to this game was the main designer, Vladimir Suchy. I do tend to enjoy heavier Euro games, and he is known for that. So that's what kind of drew me first to this game. The theme is very unique too. The Black Plague, Black Death is going on, and that hasn't ever been done in a board game. So I thought that was a cool theme to play out and see what it was all about. I kind of dove into this without knowing too much about the game, but we did get it to the table recently. It played out a lot differently than I thought it would. Basically, the gist of the game is it's worker placement with some worker movement. So that's kind of a cool twist to the whole worker placement genre. You are placing workers out on the board to take different actions on these different hex spots, and once the workers are placed on the board, you can then activate them to move them to various spots on future turns. The different hexes have the different actions depicted on it, which can do various things. So pretty much what you're trying to do is you're trying to rescue these people from the town of Messina, because the Black Plague is going on. You're trying to bring them back to your estate to keep them safe until it gets better. And once the Black Plague has kind of made its rounds and kind of done its thing in Messina, you're trying to safely bring them back to their colony after the fact. So with that, there's some unique things. I don't know if you guys want to talk more on some of the nuances to the theme or some of the other things that go on with this game too, but that's kind of the overhead view of it.
Yeah, this game did a lot of the theme really well in terms of you have people that are populating in this town, you are trying to save them, and then they can be going to work for you to help you try to best be saving the town of Messina, because we looked this up. It was a port city in Italy around this time, and there was a lot of traffic, people and goods going in and out of that port into Europe, then around to the rest of the world. And this was kind of a hub of where the Black Plague was kind of either being spread or where we could curtail it. So that's what we were trying to do as these different players in this game. John, what was something that stuck out to you right away when we first started playing Messina?
I think one cool mechanism of this game is it does have a push your luck mechanism with the rats. You're actually allowed to go into areas that have been affected by the plague, and if you can't destroy or control the plague on that action, you actually have to take a rat token, and those give you negative points at the end of the game based on how many you've accumulated throughout the game. But the first few you take, it really doesn't stack up too much until you're at your 5th or 6th rat token, which kind of allows you an opportunity to take really vital actions early on in the game, or maybe even later in the game, if you think you can make a bigger gain than loss down the road.
Yeah, the first time we played it, and I wanted to say, these rat tokens aren't like little cardboard where it's a picture of a rat on it. They're the wood rat cutout. So I didn't feel that bad accumulating a few of them. But the first time we played, we were just averse to getting any of the rats, that we wanted to avoid it at all costs, avoid it like the plague, if you will, because we didn't want them to stack up. But then halfway through that first game, we realized, oh, wait a minute, I need to get to these spots. I think I can take this hit. And then by the second game, that was part of our strategy, is it was mitigating that kind of damage that was going on, as we knew you got to take some of these on to do a lot better. And I think our second time we scored a lot more points.
Oh yeah,
everybody did, because we were okay going a couple of steps back, going into some infested areas and not clearing out the plague for the sake of really scoring our points. That was something that really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the Lords of Waterdeep expansion, where they had the skulls that you could go and get better actions now, but you'd have to take a skull, which would then be negative points later in the game. So it is kind of that risk management, or kind of push your luck with that. Some of these actions are really vital early in the game, especially if you don't have a lot of fire tokens to take down the disease right away, and you need a specific action to kind of push, bump yourself forward that much more. You just go ahead and just take the rat. You don't feel as bad about it, but it is exponentially worse for more and more negative points as you get more. So you do have to kind of be careful late game with that. But by that point, you hopefully have your engine kind of built. It's really cool because each player also has their own player board, which I really enjoyed. It had a really cool mechanism with the quarantine houses and also with the colony itself, because it wasn't always the fact that you wanted to bring somebody just straight to your colony to have them give you bonus actions. There is also a strategy to bring them into your quarantine houses and have them work for you in quarantine various ways too. So I really liked how the theme was just poured into each action you did in this game, and it wasn't just this action's bad, this action's good, I guess I'll go ahead and take this because that's all I can do, even though it's worse. But you could really make an essentially bad thematic action make sense for you strategically.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points. I really liked the fact that people that were infected that you had to put into quarantine weren't necessarily like empty spots or they didn't like cost you. You could put them to work, and that was a really successful engine that I found, is if you were building up those quarantine cabins to actually give you some sort of residual, then you could gladly bring people who needed to be in quarantine for a couple of turns, still get them to use to give you a little bit of wood or some money as residuals before they could enter your kind of compound area. I really liked that mechanism. In addition to that, I thought it was really cool how the board started out with those hex tiles arranged, and then it started to slowly grow. So kind of like Betrayal at House on the Hill, where when you explored a new room, it would kind of add to your board that you were playing. This one, it was sequential after each round, but it was adding and expanding a little bit more, and these tiles obviously had better abilities. They'd be worth more endgame points potentially, but you could slowly expand this out so it didn't get stale. I really liked that aspect of it too. John, what were some of your highlights of this game?
The one thing we tried the second game is we tried the alternative sides to our player boards, as well as the scroll racks. Essentially, the main side, everything's generic between each player, which I do think is also nice because it allows for more of an open play style. With the B sides, with the different player boards, there's actually appears to be at least, certain things that are more powerful if you go down those routes with like strategy wise. And the combination with the scroll racks is pretty interesting because you can get bonus points for certain aspects of the game. And I wouldn't say it really like pigeonholes you into trying to do those strategies, but just gives you a bonus if you can accomplish to get your scroll rack up and also do some of those things along the way with what's on your scroll rack. So
well, and that adds a little autonomy to your end game scoring because those were end game points. And even though they were unique, like you said, it didn't pigeonhole your strategy because you had three options that you could be either bull rushing one of them towards or kind of working some up to be improving your late game state. And they all were varied enough and balanced enough for the most part that it gave you different ways to try to construct how you were playing this game. I really liked that as well. Corey, what were your thoughts on the end game scoring aspect of this?
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. It added some variability to the end game. And like John said, it didn't really pigeonhole you into having to go after a specific strategy to win. It just kind of said, hey, if you do kind of lean a little heavier on this, or when the timing is right, lean a little heavier on it, you're going to get some additional bonus points for that. Another thing I really enjoyed, another pro with this game, is the timing aspect in the game.
Yes, absolutely.
I thought that was a very neat thing. You always felt on the edge of your seat like, hey, if I don't take the spot now or travel to this spot now, will somebody else take it? Or which person are you using? Because it's free to move adjacent to one of your meeples on the board, but you have to pay 1 coin per spot you move further than the adjacent hexes. So it might have been beneficial in one instance to go ahead and take the free action, but then again, do you pay that extra coin to go one step further to maybe block somebody else from getting it to be free for them, or take it before they're going to get it? So it's kind of that mind game, head game with the players, and also when to buy the carts to then eventually send the people back to Messina.
Yes.
That was a very big timing thing too. The carts are worth more earlier in the game, or for the first couple people who buy them, they're worth more victory points. But not only that, I found myself toward the middle, late game not having the opportunity to buy an additional cart when needed to really pop off that big turn. So that was really cool.
Yeah, buying the carts, that was at a premium, that in order to repopulate a part of the town, and then you get a lot of victory points that they could be 6, 8, 10, all the way up to I think the highest one is like 19.
Yeah.
So that was one of the timing aspects I really liked, was when you had to decide, when am I going to repopulate back to this town, because it costs you a lot of your workers, where you'd have to sometimes sacrifice one of your lieutenants in order to get the victory points for this. And you had to time it right, because if you go too early, you might start getting plague on that, and then you'll be getting more rats, and that can cascade. Or if you try it too late, somebody might snipe you on it. So the timing was really big in this game, and by the second playthrough, we really started to get a hold of that.
I thought some of the ebbs and flows of the game was going to detract from me, which it didn't, but I thought just hey, we're going to take people away from Messina, quarantine them, make sure it's safe before bringing them back. Okay, now it's time to bring them back. I thought that was going to be more like a linear progression in the game, but I don't feel like it was as linear as it seemed on the surface. I still felt like there was a lot of strategic decisions with all that wrapped into itself. It didn't feel like you had to do this, then that, then this, then that, and that's how you win the game. You still had a lot of neat decision making throughout the game, and you could then, the timing thing, decide when to do each of the different phases essentially of the game.
Yes, and there was no point when anybody seemed like they were running away with it. There's a lot of jostling for, who would be first player for the next round, because I thought that was a really interesting mechanic too.
Yep.
Is the player order is determined based on your positioning in different tracks. Each turn it's different. So John, we've talked a lot about the pros of Messina 1347. What are some of the cons possibly to this game?
For most people, I think there's going to be a lot going on here. You have, your estate with the 3 different overseers you're moving around. You have a lot of iconography, both in the state on the board. You have your quarantine huts, you've got workshops, you've got your scroll rack, you've got the 3 reputation tracks, you've got the board itself with your different meeples and how they're moving around, you've got the plague coming in and out, you've got so much stuff going on. It's definitely overwhelming. I would say it's both a con and a pro that there are so many avenues to take this, but there's definitely things that seem more advantageous than other things. So getting pigeonholed into certain actions with one of your last workers is not going to be great. And not a lot of ways to mitigate that, it seems. Yeah,
and the first time we were reading through the rule book, there was a couple of times when we had to stop and just reread a section, or somebody would have a question and then, it would be immediately answered after, so that was good. But there's a lot going on early in this game, set up figuring out what you could do, what you should do. But it became very intuitive after it only took us one round.
I was going to say the one good thing is that the steps for resolving your turn are pretty straightforward. I know Corey was trying to break it every time, but it's like, no, you place your guy, you take the people off the tile, you then deal with the plague if it's there, you do the tile action, and while you're doing the tile action, now that's where certain other options come available, but you can't do anything in those first 2 steps. It's only in that action phase once you hit that where, let's say you've gone up on the popularity track and you hit a milestone where you can take a coin or go up one on another track. Well, you can do that before or after you take the action. And I like that aspect of it because it seems streamlined, but again, that then does open up more options for people that maybe can't intake all the complexity with the game.
Sure.
I was going to say there definitely is an order of operations to this game, but only sometimes. Like, it doesn't apply to this, but it typically applies, but not in this situation. So there is definitely an order of operations that it's definitely on, I would say, on the heavier end of middleweight game. It's not the heaviest of games, but so if you're a seasoned gamer, I think you're really going to. There's a lot of rules referencing the first game too, but after that first game, I think it's really going to click and be intuitive. The theme definitely plays into how intuitive it is with the gameplay, also. So that's real nice. But if you are a first-time gamer or newer to the hobby, it's going to be kind of a beast to get into. The rule book wasn't as clear as it could have been in some stuff.
A beast to start, but it's not a game that it has so much complexity and depth that it's a slog to get through. It was just that initial barrier, and after the first round or so, then it really alleviated a lot of those. Not even frustrations, just kind of, pivots or like stop and start and like, okay, did we do this right? Did we do that right? Okay, no, Corey, you can't do it in that order. You have to do it in this order. And then, we were able to have a much smoother playthrough, and then we played it the second time right away after, and it took probably half the time.
And it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So
yes, that might have played into it a little bit as well.
But we did want to play a second game right after, so that kind of holds a testament to how fun I thought it was too. But another con with a question mark, a con that I wanted to ask you guys if it kind of applied to your thinking, was the variability.
You're saying it wouldn't have a lot of replayability?
Yeah. Like initially on the surface, I'm kind of feeling that.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Like I said earlier, I think there are avenues that are much more advantageous in this game. And I know just watching people play and how they were trying to change things up, there was clearly one thing that was going to work much better than others. And if you didn't do that, you were going to fall behind. I don't know if the replayability, the second time we played, I didn't feel like it changed that much. We obviously did better, but I think that was more with the efficiency of our actions, because you are very limited on actions in this game. and we got more efficient. But past that learning curve, I don't know what more you could do.
Yeah, and I guess I would agree. I know that the fact when we played on the B side of the city cards and then the scrolls for the end game points, that would add some variability to it. So then you'd have kind of differentiating ways you'd be going about accomplishing the same tasks.
Yeah.
But I agree with that, as well as it might end up getting stale.
Right, and even with the scroll rack and the different endgame points, it's like, okay, like for yours and mine, you had endgame points for workshops, I had endgame points for quarantine buildings. However, at the end of the day, you still need to go for scroll rack spots to get those endgame points, and you're still going to be building probably both those types of buildings anyway. So sure, your strategy changed a little bit, but I would argue that you're still going to be going for those things, and you're still going to need to take the right actions to even take advantage of those end game points.
You guys both had the right answer. No, that's why I kind of brought it up as a con. I can see that, it's a con for maybe the strategy aspect of the game. Will it play differently the better and better we get at the game and the more times we play it with trying to mess each other over?
Yeah.
That might be some variability in itself.
Trying to block certain play spots or things like that. Yeah, that kind of push and pull was there a little bit and more in the second game.
Yeah.
So I think that would be much more dynamic. But not many games are going to have the unique victory conditions of like a Dune Imperium, or that'll be asymmetrical game styles like Root. So we can't hold every game to like that type of standard, because sometimes it's good to you open a game and you know what you got to do, and then you just got to do it better than everybody else.
Yep.
So I can see how that would be kind of losing that replayability, but that may not necessarily be a bad thing if this is a game that you take out and you play like twice in a row and then you take it out in like a month or so.
But hey, it's a newer game. It's a base game. A lot of times designers design the base game with the expansion already designed, and they pull it out, bring it to market, and then introduce it. So there could be a little more to it that adds that variability we're talking about, or
Sure.
longing for. But I don't know. That's kind of where I sit.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, it's not even necessarily a con that it doesn't have, let's play this game 5 times in a row until 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Because you want to have different styles of game, and the theme of this is really unique. It's not like it's Pandemic, where it's a generic disease that then you're just going through and stopping.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's advantageous not to get rid of the disease. And there are other times when you can't, which is how the plague was. Like, there were certain instances you couldn't do anything about it, but send somebody to a quarantine cabin and have them work a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the final rating and give a couple of wrapping up thoughts. John, you start.
For me, this really didn't scratch any itches that I was hoping for. I'm going to be on the lower end, probably at 6.5. I definitely enjoyed playing it, and I'd play it again, but it's not something I'm going to go out of my way to suggest playing. I think after 2 playthroughs, I'm good for now. So that's where I sit. I think most of it's just, like I said, just didn't work for me. But
yeah, I'm going to give it like a 7.5. I enjoyed playing this once I got through that first barrier of how everything's going to work, once you figured it out and you can kind of get settled into your rhythm. I think this is a game that would be good to introduce people into like Euro style or like deeper, heavier games. Because once you understood it, it wasn't too complex.
Right.
But it gets a lot of those elements of worker placement, worker movement, a lot of different tracks. I think that would be good. It's good that we've played it and kind of had it in our collection or our circulation, but it's not something that I would go rush out and buy for myself, seeing as how we've already played it a couple of times. But if somebody suggested it or said, hey, have you ever heard of Messina 1347? Yeah, that game was pretty fun. So that's where I settled as like a 7 or 7.5. Corey, take us home.
I'm going to be the highest rating here. It definitely scratched some itches that I've been longing for. Me being kind of more of a dry Euro gamer, I really do like when they pour a theme that makes sense into it. And it's one of those games that I had fun playing the game itself, separate from trying to beat you guys or play against the players. I thought it was actually fun trying to bring people into quarantine and the kind of feeling like you're doing some good around the town and that sort of thing. And it really sung to me with that. So I'm going to give it a 9.
Oh,
really
nice.
high. It could go down because of the replayability, but I just think it's everything I'm looking for in a Euro game, with all the different moving parts and how they interact with one another, with just that replayability element missing from it, I think. So it just, yeah, a solid 9 for me. Like I said, it could go down if it doesn't see any love with expansion content, but it's just player boards, main board, the unique thing with moving workers, actions kind of triggering on your main board with different aspects, and just all how that interplay works is something I look for in a Euro game, and this one definitely had it.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you really liked it, because then if you suggest to bring it back to the table, both of our scores indicate that we'd play it again, and I like that diversity that we have going on. Also, fun fact, if you multiply our scores together, you get 1347.
Every time, no matter what score you get, I heard.
For all of us here at Talking Cardboard, thank you for joining us for Messina 1347, and make sure you wash your hands. Take care.